So in today's video we're going to have a bit of a flashback in a way. So in this video I'm going to be using the Iwata W400 Bellairia, which is the original gun that I started the channel with many years ago. We've had a new lad start at the shop. He had one of these Bellarias and I have not put it down since he started, because for me it's a massive bit of nostalgia. Now we're going to use this for the base coat stage on this job, and we're going to be using the Iwata WS400 Series 1 for the clear coat on this. Two of my favourite guns of all time, my biased favourite brand of all time, and these two guns, in my opinion, even 10 years on from their release, it's got to be 10 years since their release, especially the WS400, have to be still, in my opinion, after using them this week, like the best bang for your buck that you can buy. This Bellairia for base coat and wet on wet, or if you've got a lower budget, complete all-round gun in a 1.3, it'll do base coat, it'll do wet on wet, it'll do direct gloss, it'll do clear coat, and again the WS400, 10-year-old gun. You'll see this job at the end, it absolutely smashes this job out. This gun, it's not a brand new gun. Again, the WS400 is one that we picked up about 2 weeks ago, used. It was 150 quid. It's well used, it still sprays absolutely phenomenally. For two old guns, and two of my all-time favourites by a long shot, both of these absolutely smashed it out. But the main point of this video is, a lot of you guys have been asking me about how I keep my job so clean. So, stages that I would go through. So once the car's in the booth, I'll give the car a massive blow off and a massive clean down before I attempt any masking or anything when I start the job. Now, then I'll go across with water, I'll water wipe it, and then I'll solvent wipe it as well. So I'll go across it with a water-based cleaner across the panels that I'm going to be doing, and I'd say around about 6 to 8 inches around that area as well, so the edge of the glass and the other panels adjacent to what I'm painting. Then I'll go around and pre-mask everything up. We'll bag the car, and then what I'll usually do is go switch the booth on, and then I'll go across the walls, the ceiling filters and the floor, and then finally the bagged car with the airline cranked up to about 120 psi. So I'll go across the whole booth, front to back, so blowing towards the extraction with the high pressure air to try and release any loose dust or dirt that is in the booth and get it released off before I even start to paint. Then what I'll do is I'll come out of the spray booth, I'll go and get my suit on, I'll get my gloves on, I'll get the paint clip to the gun, and then when I come back in, I'll blow the bag off on the car again, because the air then has had plenty of time to settle, and then I'll go across and very thoroughly tack the car. Now, as you'll see here, between each coat on this job I'm tacking off quite religiously, and I'm giving it a real good scrub as well. Now at the moment it's very hot here in the UK, temperatures are changing, so like I said in the previous video, we've slowed the speed of the thinners down a little bit, but even so I believe on this day it was 30 plus in the booth without the heater going. Now what that can do sometimes is cause a few issues as far as like your base coat blends and the overspray landing a little bit dry. So on a job like this where it's a very dark blue, it's a very coarse metallic, I've used black primer for it, so it's covering up literally the first coat, it was covered up, and then the next are just going to be quick little blends just to make sure everything's right. But wherever this base coat's landing, it's almost getting a tiny bit rough. Now we're using a slow reducer at the moment. Even putting a wet bed down in this kind of temperature, you know, you'd be putting a wet bed down and it'd be drying almost instantly, so it'd be hard to keep a wet bed wet. So going across and religiously tacking off any of the overspray, limiting the amount of time that, or the amount of times that you go in and out of the booth as well, because each time you go in and out of the booth, you're opening the door, you're walking out into a very hot, dry air environment where there's going to be a lot of dust because it is hot and it is dry, and all these things are sort of things that I take into account when we're doing a job. So in the winter I won't tack off this much, I just don't need to. I find that my jobs are a lot cleaner during the winter months, but when the summer, when the air's a lot drier and there's a lot more stuff getting kicked up in the air outside the booth, and obviously the booth's a lot hotter and drier inside as well, I do find it makes a big difference. So as you can see, I'm giving everything a really good scrub off in between each coat, almost like the first tack that I do every time, making sure I get any loose bits. And also you'll find that any little nibs that do stick to the panel, sometimes when you've got a tack cloth like this, so I keep a tack cloth in my paint suit so it's not really sticky, and none of the residue will transfer off because it's probably the one that I've used the day before 90% of the time. Then that means that I can give it a good scrub without transferring that residue over. So if there are any little nibs that are stuck to the panel, I can just go across and do that. Now I very rarely ever denib the base coat itself. I prefer to leave it. On the mirror cover on this job, we did denib the base coat because on this edge that you'll see in a minute, there was a small issue where it had a little bit of a paint reaction. So I just went to the back of the booth, I got a P800 soft pad which I keep in the spray booth exactly for this reason, although on this particular day that I was filming I couldn't seem to pull one of these P800 pads off the roll to save my life, so you'll have to excuse the fact that it's taking me a while just to pull this off the roll. But it was a very, very hot day and I don't know, I was just struggling a little bit on this day as far as painting went. But if you did have like an overly large nib that was really going to cause problems, or a nib that was a different colour to the base coat that's going to really stand out, then you could just get an 800 soft pad and just lightly scuff it off. And then in this case, where we've got this little bit of a fry up on the edge of this mirror cover, which is a bit strange bearing in mind I used it like the same wet on wet I've been using for the last few weeks, but maybe because at the moment it's a bit hotter, I'm painting a little bit wetter to try and keep things wet. So maybe I just put a little bit too much base down on there, a little bit too wet, and obviously all that fresh solvent will eat into any of the layers underneath and can cause fry ups and paint reactions. But the way to cure that is literally like I've done there, just denib it. You could use anything like a 500, 600, 800, whatever you've got lying around, and then I'll just put a few semi-wet coats on, and in between I'm keeping the air from the spray gun going so that it'll dry it off, and especially in the heat that we had in the booth on this day, it's almost instantly drying, so I can just dust that area back in, and then when I clear coat it up, it'll clear coat over with no issues, because obviously the clear coat itself doesn't have the same harsh solvent content that the base coat does. So in that quick little flick there, that's done, that paint reaction's fixed, no more issues. Now I will tend to only come out the booth once in the middle of a job, once I've come in. So I'll do the base coat and then I'll take the base coat gone out, I'll mix my clear up and I'll come in. But in between the flash off times on the base coat and the flash off times on the clear coat, again I'll try and stay in the booth. I'll try and limit the amount of times that I'm opening and closing doors. Although our door is right at the back and it's right next to the filter, it's one of those things that I think the less times you can go in and out, the less chance you've got of bringing contaminants back into the booth. The other thing that I found made a massive difference to how clean the jobs were was actually switching over to disposable cup systems as well, because when you've got a cup on your gun, sometimes you can not get lazy, but you can get a bit complacent with not cleaning the threads on the cup 100%. And each time you screw and unscrew the threads on or off the cup, if there is any like base coat or clear coat that's got stuck in them threads and it has dried, when you twist the threads off, those little bits will crack away, and you won't notice it because it might be like your clear gun, for instance, and it'll be a tiny little clear bit that falls into the gun. You then mix up your clear coat, put your clear coat into the gun, and that little speck or specks, for instance, will then be inside the cup, mixed in with your clear that you've strained, and you'll be wondering where these extra nibs are coming from. Well, they're actually coming from the gun itself. So keeping your guns in tip-top condition is key as well to getting a really nice clean paint job. And also just things like your airlines. Like if your airlines are getting old, change your airlines out. We've got quite cheap airlines. They're only about 20-30 quid off Amazon. Once every 6 months for a £20 airline for the booth. I don't care, we'll take it off and we'll bin it off for a new one. So we've always got a nice fresh airline on the booth. You'll find, especially with the heat as well, that I find the airlines in the spray booth deteriorate quite quickly. So if they're deteriorating on the inside, which you can't see, and then fibres are coming away from the inside of the airline and then travelling down your air, that could obviously be causing you problems. And just general housekeeping as far as your booth goes. Now, we're extremely busy at the moment, so like this job, I prepped this and everything in the booth. So I did all the clear coat sanding and everything, and all the prep in the booth. And you'll see at the end that this job is extremely clean. For a job that I did start to finish in the booth, it shouldn't really be that clean. But all these little things add up. Like, as I'm going around now, I'm making sure that before I start this last coat of clear, I am giving it a real good scrub down with that tack cloth. I'm giving it a real good blow around. Even tack, again, 6 inches around the masking film, so that any of the dust or any of the overspray that's landed on the masking film around the area that you're painting won't come loose and end up in your spray job. Again, stuff like your paint suit, make sure you've got a nice good paint suit. And if you're looking for a good paint suit, we just happen to have our own range on the website, so cheeky little plug there for our premium paint suits. And just daft things like that. It seems daft, and I get so many people saying, you know, like, because our booth's not a new booth, it's a very old booth, in fact. It has its problems, it's temperamental at times, but it is an old booth. It's not like we've got a brand new booth and a perfect booth. You know, it does have its issues. It's not the cleanest booth in the world, but it's certainly not the dirtiest either. We keep it well looked after. We give it regular filter changes on the extraction all the time, between every single job. So when this job goes out, the first thing that will happen is the booth will get fully swept out. If I need to, I'll even get the dust extraction hoover, and just give the floor a quick once over. Once every couple of weeks, I will get the brush and brush all the walls off and all the lights off and give it a full airline out at high pressure, again to try and limit any loose dust that's sitting on the walls or anywhere. I'm not particularly a massive fan of the tacky coating on the walls, just because I'm a bit of an idiot, and whenever I put the tacky coating on walls, I always end up leaning against the wall and getting covered in the stuff. It is really good stuff, but like I say, just because I completely forget it's there and end up leaning on it and covered in it is the reason that I don't like it. It does work, and it is extremely good. Now, base coat for this was our KAPCI base coat. I can't off the top of my head remember the colour code for this, but I will add it into the description for the video for you guys if any of you guys want to know what it is. This is actually a subscriber's card again. It's come, I think, about an hour and a half over to have this done, because he's had some previous paintwork done elsewhere at a few other shops and wasn't quite happy with the quality that he was getting, so he's brought this one over to us so that we can sort it out for him. The clear coat we're using on this again is the KAPCI 6030. Spray gun for the clear is obviously the WS400 Series 1. Huge favourite gun of mine. I've been absolutely loving using this spray gun again this sort of last 2 weeks. You really do forget like just how much of an amazing gun this is for the money. The Series 2, the brand new WS400 has just come out. It is something that I will be reviewing soon. It's just going to take me a little bit because I'm going to have to save up for one, and at the minute I can't just splash out 600 quid on a brand new spray gun just for the sake of doing a review. But as soon as I get a chance, I will be getting one of those ordered, so just bear with me on that. And again, you know, it will be an unbiased review, the same as all my reviews. It's not going to be pushed by anybody or influenced in any way by anybody. From what I've heard about the WS400 Series 2, it's a phenomenal spray gun. A few of the issues that the original Series 1 had have been tweaked out. So we've now got a digital gauge, which is more of a little perk than an issue. And the way that they've done their digital gauge, I think, is sort of very game changing in the way that they've done their gauge as well. It's easy for anybody to change a battery. It's inbuilt into the handle, and it's fully removable for gun cleaning, so that's not an issue. On the Series 1 that I'm using here, we'd be running this around about 3 turns out on the fluid at this point, 1 3/4 turns out on the fluid, and at 2 bar. That's getting me a really, really perfect factory finish on this, to be honest. We literally just did 1 or 2 nibs on this car and put it back together, and it looks absolutely stunning. It looks factory, and it came out really nice, really clean. And again, that cleanliness just comes down to good housekeeping, being really sort of rigorous with your prep and your cleaning before you bag it. After it's been bagged, I quite often end up water and panel wiping a job 2-3 times once it's in the booth, in between actually getting it masked and getting it painted. And I mean, as you can tell there already, finish wise we're spot on, and I'm going to take you for a really nice little slow walk around this in a minute with the camera. Get up nice and close just so you can see that, you know, it's not a camera trick that these look clean. These jobs really are coming out clean, and it's nothing fancy that I'm doing. It's nothing as a sort of like overly experienced painter that I'm doing or anything like that. It's just being really OCD with the way that you're cleaning it, with your tacking in between each coat, with your gun cleanliness. You know, all these tiny little details all come together to build one bigger picture. You know, it's like having one big piece to a jigsaw. There isn't one big piece to this jigsaw that when somebody messages me and say, look, you know, dude, you're getting your jobs really clean, how does it come up really clean? There's no one big piece that fixes the cleanliness issue. It's a lot of little tiny things that need to be kept up with on every job, and obviously the biggest part as well is making sure that you keep your booth treated well. Too many shops that I see treat the booth as just one great big box that they paint in. It's one of the most important tools in our shop. I also thought I'd leave the fade out thinner in this, so this is the multi-mix fade out thinners, the aerosol version that I use. It's nice and quick, easy. I'll leave it in the booth box so it's dead easy and accessible. Just 2 very light coats is enough. Don't overload it, and it'll melt in absolutely spot on. It's brilliant stuff, this. And as always, with every video, I will leave a link to in the description to these spray guns, the clear coat, and also the fade out thinners as well. So as I said, you can see there just how clean this is. There is no camera trickery. We cannot, remove dirt nibs. I think there was like 1 or 2 in the top of these 2 doors, in the whole 2 doors. And I think there was 1 or 2 in the top of the door on this side. But overall, this came out like spotlessly clean. For a booth of this age, for something that was literally prepped where it was painted, it was ridiculously clean. And it all comes down to just keeping to those key things and keeping them going on every single job. If you get in the habit of doing them on every job, then it soon becomes something that you don't really think about. So that's it for me for today's video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this little sort of tricks and tips video on how I keep my jobs as clean as I do, and I'll see you again next week for the next one. Bye for now.